In this video today, JD Vance calls out the media.
We do not determine important government officials based on anonymous sourcing from the American media.
Also, former President Obama plays the blame game.
The election proved that democracy is pretty far down on people's priority list.
And the White House press secretary is struggling at this point because the media wants answers.
I answered that question. I don't have anything else to add. I answered the question. I answered the question.
The one thing that connects the individuals that Trump has picked either to be his vice president or in these cabinet positions, these are fighters. They are not backing down. That's why the vice president-elect today, JD Vance, came out and had a chilling message for the media. Check it out.
Pete Hegseth is going to get his appearing before the Senate Armed Services Committee, not a sham hearing before the American media. We believe that Pete Hegseth is the right guy to lead the Department of Defense. That's why President Trump nominated him. We're not abandoning this nomination. We're not going to make it easy for people to allow the Secretary of Defense is Donald J. Trump, who just won an election by a very significant consent of the United States Senate. That's who determines who the Secretary of Defense is. I fully support Pete. I think Pete's going to get confirmed, and we are completely behind him. I have talked to Joni. I've talked to a number of my colleagues about this nomination and about other nominations. All I'm asking is that people actually allow the Senate process to work. We do not determine important government officials based on anonymous sourcing from the American media. We determine who our officials are through the nomination process, the advice and consent process of the United States Senate. That's how it should happen, and that's how the president's nominees are going to work through this process.
Well, somebody had to come out and say it, and good thing it was JD Vance, right? Because we haven't really heard from JD Vance since the election. And it's always good to hear him come out and put his foot down, especially when he has to rage against the media, because we know that the media has been relentless in trying to smear Pete Hegseth, all based on anonymous sources. So Donald Trump this morning put out a post saying Pete Hegseth is doing very well. His support is strong and deep, much more so than the fake news would have you believe. He was a great student, Princeton, Harvard educated with a military state of mind. He will be fantastic, high energy Secretary of Defense, one who leads with charisma and skill. Pete is a winner, and there is nothing that can be done to change that! Exclamation points, right? Then JD Vance quotes that and says this: led by President Trump, we're fighting for Pete Hegseth, and we're doing so because Pete Hegseth will fight for our troops. For too long, the Pentagon has been led by people who lose wars. Pete Hegseth is a man who fought in those wars. We got his back. And then Pete Hegseth also quoted this. He said, "Thank you, Mr. President. Like you, we will never back down." Okay, so if you need a quick laugh, look at this picture for you. So let's compare our Pete to their Pete, right? I mean, I think that is hilarious. Now, this post is actually interesting from Mark Halperin, and you could consider him a true insider, right? He really has the ear of what's going on in Washington every single day. He also is the owner of the Two-Way app, and I can link his information in the comments section below because I think it's definitely worth watching what he puts out on YouTube. Now, he puts this up. There are 5 kinds of Republican senators. Number one, those who unalterably oppose to voting for Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense. Second, those who are almost certainly going to vote no, but are telling the White House that they have an open mind. Number 3, those that are on track to vote yes, but could switch if new, reliable, damaging information comes out. Number 4, those who are definitely planning to vote yes and are very bullish about his chances for confirmation. And 5, those who are definitely planning to vote yes but think Hegseth is likely doomed. Yeah, so I just had to show you this because it really takes you into the mindset of what's happening in Washington, particularly in the Senate, as it pertains to these confirmation hearings, and that on social media, it's very clear who we want. We want Pete Hegseth, but we don't actually get to decide, right? It's the Senate who's going to do that. Now, we all know what will happen if they find a way to get him out of there and they find a way not to confirm him. I think they're just setting themselves up for a terrible midterm. Right. And now he also put up this post as well. Things that could seriously knock the Pete Hegseth nomination off course. A Republican senator comes out against him publicly. That's what I was just saying. I mean, I think that would be bad for them in the midterms. 2, new revelations that suggest a possible pattern of conduct. 3, a previously known but anonymous accuser does an on-camera interview with a news organization. And 4, President-elect Trump gets tired of the controversy and or feels more intensely that he was not told the truth. So at this point, you can see how there's so much information flying back and forth, especially between the media, Trump's transition team, what's happening on Capitol Hill. And really, if you break it down, there's like three truths that are taking place. Number one is the truth of what's actually happening behind closed doors on Capitol Hill between the senators and their discussions. Secondly is the Trump transition team, Trump himself, in conjunction with a Pete Hegseth and other members of the actual team. And then third is the media and what they would want you to believe about Pete Hegseth, and so on and so forth. So this brings us to the next clip I want to show you is someone who will be speaking on behalf of Trump officially. His incoming White House press secretary had some words about Pete Hegseth.
Contrary to what many in the media are reporting, there has never been a wavering in the optimism and the confidence from President Trump in Pete Hegseth. He is brilliant. He is intelligent. He is a war fighter, a decorated combat veteran who honorably served this great country. And when you hear him speak on Capitol Hill, you hear how passionate he is to stand up for the war fighters, the men and women who are honorably serving this country in uniform. The Pentagon is clearly failing the American people. Look at the conflicts we are embroiled in abroad. They just failed their 7th audit in a row. The American people elected President Trump to nominate outsiders who are not entrenched in Washington politics to shake up the swamp. That's exactly what Pete Hegseth is going to do. That's why the swamp is after him. President Trump stands by him 100%.
I agree with what she's saying. I'm sure you agree with what she's saying, and social media agrees with what she's saying. So what seems to be the issue? Well, it's exactly what she highlighted. You're talking about a nominee who is clearly anti-establishment, and they're not going to go down without a fight. Okay, they're going to find a way to disrupt this nomination. Just like if it wasn't him, the next person on the docket would be RFK Jr. or Tulsi Gabbard, right? Now let's circle back to the Vice President-elect JD Vance, because he wasn't just out there to give a message to the media, but he also had a message for the White House in regards to FEMA.
Things you want people in this area to see change under your administration that starts in January?
Well, I think one, hopefully it doesn't take 45 days for this to happen. But as I mentioned earlier, Tom and Ted have explicitly asked the Biden administration to grant the FEMA waiver that would allow mobile homes to come back to this area, that would actually give people some short and maybe some medium-term housing. I mean, Tom and Ted are welcome to talk about that if they want to say more. I hope it doesn't take 45 days, but if, God forbid, it takes 45 days, that's something that is going to change immediately under President Trump's leadership. Think about it. The argument here is that you can't allow people to put mobile homes in a floodplain, in an area that has the risk of flood damage. Well, that's pretty much this entire area, an area of the state of Massachusetts. If you don't grant a waiver, you're effectively telling people they've got to move hundreds of miles away and do it 2 weeks before Christmas. It's ridiculous. It's atrocious. And we need a government that responds quickly to the needs of its citizens. So much of the frustration at FEMA, at everybody else, it's not malice. I don't believe that the officials of the Biden administration are intentionally doing bad things, but it's bureaucratic red tape, it's slowness, it's a bureaucracy that is moving at the speed of a glacier when what you need is people to respond to the concerns of the people of Western North Carolina.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is an example of common sense, okay? And this is why Doge is a thing. This is why Trump needs to be in the White House. And we need individuals to think outside the box and stop trying to do what people have been doing that has really been slowing down the whole purpose of FEMA, right? I mean, it's so fascinating how many people that have to say yes in order to actually help a disaster victim on the ground. And then it's also interesting how they won't even make exemptions to their own policies to make sure the victim is taken care of. Again, this goes back to common sense, right? Now, we know that JD Vance has common sense, but I don't think the person he ran against during the election campaign, Tim Walz, has common sense, because he finally did a post-election interview, and here's what he said about the loss.
I think we're going to have to understand what type of leadership do they want. We were pledging to be inclusive. We were pledging to bring people in. Donald Trump has said that isn't what he wants. And so if that's what America's leaning towards, I guess for me, it's to understand and learn more about America, because I thought that they were going to probably move towards a more positive message.
And that's exactly why they lost, because he still will not admit or acknowledge how Americans truly feel. He believes Americans believe in a negative vision. And I'm not a big doom and gloom guy myself. I'm a very positive individual. I don't really think, our country is going to go to hell tomorrow. But I do believe that the damage that was done in the Biden and Harris administration definitely hurt a lot of people, especially the American working class. But again, the Democrats and the establishment, they just think they're better than everybody and they know better. And clearly, the results keep proving that they don't. Now, Tim Walz wasn't the only person who's continuing to struggle after this election loss. Here is former President Obama spiraling out of control and blaming Republicans for possibly rigging the election. Watch.
The election proved that democracy is pretty far down on people's priority list. Pluralism is not about holding hands and singing Kumbaya. It is not about abandoning your convictions. It is about recognizing that in a democracy, power comes from forging alliances and building coalitions and making room in those coalitions, not only for the woke, but also for the waking. There are going to be times, potentially, when one side tries to stack the deck and lock in a permanent grip on power, either by actively suppressing votes or politicizing the armed forces or using the judiciary, the criminal justice system to go after opponents. And in those circumstances, pluralism does not call for us to just stand back and say, well, I'm not sure. That's okay. In those circumstances, a line has been crossed, and we have to stand firm.
Okay, so the thing about what Obama is saying is it's just all nonsense, and I'll give it to you guys in a very simple way. The Democratic Party, they've been pushing people away, and the Republican Party, they've been accepting people. All you have to do is agree on one little thing with a conservative, and it's a pretty good rapport. But if you disagree on something small with a Democrat, particularly a progressive, all hell breaks loose. And so that really sums up what's been happening to them. So hopefully he makes a full recovery after this election loss. And if I had to sum up one word about everything that he said, it's gaslighting. It's exactly what they've been always great at doing. And on the topic of gaslighting, the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, is now being challenged by the White House press corps. I mean, they're finally growing a set of balls, and they're finally challenging her and calling her out for her lies.
Question. In your first briefing here, as press secretary, you committed to speaking to the American people in, and I quote, in a transparent way, in a truthful way, and an honest way.
Yes.
And then in July, here at this podium, you were asked about the president pardoning his son, and he said, it's a no, it will be a no, it's a no.
Yes. And that is
so
exactly right.
Of the president's son and that pardon, it became a yes. I'm wondering if you would like to explain to us, the American people, really why the information that you provided turned out not to be true.
And I answered this question on Monday. We spent about 30 minutes on this, almost 30 minutes, roughly 30 minutes on this particular issue. And I'm just going to reiterate what I said on Air Force One to your colleagues when I did the gaggle. And look, if you look at his statement, it's pretty comprehensive. The statement that he put out on Sunday when he made this decision to pardon his son, Hunter Biden. Now, the bigger picture here is understanding her position in all of this. Okay, so she's stuck in a hard place here. All right, she cannot really be honest about what's going on because her whole job description is she has to cover for her boss 110% of the time. Okay, and so she's not going to come out and claim that Joe Biden was wrong and he clearly lied. And yes, on one hand, we said that we are the most transparent administration and we will continue to be transparent. And then on another, we end up lying to the American people. She's not going to say anything like that. So, but again, instead of just being straight up with us, which she can't do, the next thing to do is just to blame the Republicans. Listen to this. He believes in the justice system. He believes the facts are. Obviously, I talked about the gun charges, what legal experts have said. Former prosecutors have all agreed virtually no one would be criminally prosecuted for underlying factors of Hunter's case. I talked about the gun charges. I talked about the taxes. the tax cases, and there are other factors here. What Republicans have said, as they weren't going to let up. I talked about the upcoming sentencing and what Hunter and his family have been through. I talked about the appointees by the incoming president on law enforcement positions, and he wrestled with it. He did. And I also talked about what Jim Clyburn said. So you're asking me about an apology, but Jim Clyburn said himself in a conversation that he had with the president just 2 weeks ago, the president said, the president was reticent when he encouraged the president. When he himself, Jim Clyburn, encouraged the president to move forward with it, Congressman Clyburn, the president, responded to him by saying he was reticent.
Okay, so they were out for retribution. Okay, let's really unpack that for a second here. You mean they are demanding accountability? It's almost as if they are allergic to that word. Right now, they will gladly say that Trump should be held to account. But when it's about them, they don't hold themselves to the same standard. And guys, this is what we're dealing with when it comes to politics. There's zero accountability. I mean, that's really what's going on here. So I'm not shocked that they are going to blame the Republicans and Trump for why this pardon makes sense. And to make things even more pathetic for you to watch, here is her saying that Joe Biden still has a great deal of credibility left as president.
There have been, we've heard quotes and support from many elected officials. I've just mentioned Jim Clyburn. There was Senator Dick Durbin. He said it's a right given to the president, a power given to him under the Constitution, and Joe Biden is using it in a very humane way. I think Hunter Biden has been exploited for political purposes. It's not the first time. It won't be the last time in American history, but I can certainly understand Joe Biden standing up and saying that he wants to protect his son. Nancy Pelosi, when she was asked about this particular issue, she said, "I support the president." Representative Jasmine Crockett, I think that it was the right move. And there's been others who have, in the Democratic Party, part of the leadership, and others who have supported this president in his decision.
Yeah, so imagine coming to work and 99% of what you have to talk about is the fact that the president lied, and you have to play mental gymnastics on how to push back on the media without obviously getting upset, but also trying to make sense at the same time. I mean, yeah, so that must be the hardest thing to do. But, you know, when you're citing people who are unhinged themselves, like a Jasmine Crockett, yeah, I don't think the president has any true support or credibility at this point. We know that this action has definitely diminished his legacy at this point. In fact, there's a new poll that came out that most Americans believe by the end of Joe Biden's presidency that he will be looked at in the history books as one of the worst presidents in United States history.
Zeke asked this question, I just didn't hear an answer. The next time that the president says he will or won't do something, why should the American people believe him?
I answered that question. I don't have anything else to add. I answered the question.
Can you explain it in a way that's understandable?
I can't speak to you understanding the question or not, or my answer or not on this. I don't have anything else to say. I'm not going to relitigate this. I did that on Monday for 30 minutes. I went back and forth. I laid out. I said, please read the president's really comprehensive statement on this. And I even said the last paragraph of that statement, he talks directly to the American people. And that's how I answered that question.
And part of that is because Americans don't believe in the justice system. But don't tell KJP that, because she has an excuse for that as well.
Judge in a jury's decisions on the cases involving his son. He criticized the political nature of the prosecution. The next president has spent the last several years vowing to upend the Justice Department and the FBI. Looking at their current and future presidents, why should any American continue to have confidence in the American justice system?
Well, the president does have confidence in the American justice system. And he said that in his statement. Certainly continues to have confidence in the Department of Justice.
Leaders who single out incidents that involve them or their families and say, well, they're not being fair to me, but the rest of you should agree.
Can I just be very blunt here? The situation with Hunter Biden and what the incoming president has said are very different.
But they're making similar arguments, which is that they've been unfairly prosecuted because of who they are.
I don't think those two things are the same. I just don't. They're not the same. They're just not. And I think the American people understand that. I do think they believe and understand that they're not the same. what the president's son had to go through, and what we've heard from legal experts, former U.S. attorneys general, who look at this case, who understand this case, and have said this would not there would not be this situation. And I think that's important to note as well. And they've been very clear about this. We've heard from many of them, legal experts, former U.S. attorneys from across the country, again, have all agreed virtually no one would be criminally prosecuted with felony offenses with these facts.
Yeah, actually, the American people understand that there are definitely similarities between the two cases, meaning we know Hunter Biden at some level was targeted. Let's just be honest. Why? Because of the timing. And when I say targeted, I'm not actually saying it in the way that you guys might think. I'm saying it, they targeted Hunter Biden in order to save face at how bad they were targeting Trump, right? So they weren't really going after Hunter Biden because they truly wanted to go after him and hold him accountable, because if they really did, they would have went towards the actual crimes that were committed, not the surface level stuff with the gun possession and lying on the application. I mean, that's small stuff, right? There's way more things that were damaging to not just him, but Joe Biden. So yeah, they targeted him in order to try to balance out the Americans' opinion about the justice system between the Trump cases and then using Hunter Biden's case. Now, this next story has to do with individuals who clearly targeted Pete Hegseth, and that is the Morning Joe show. They had to issue a full apology to Fox News because of how bad they slandered Pete Hegseth and other hosts from Fox. Let's take a listen to that.
Before we go to break, a little bit earlier in this block, there was a comment made about Fox News in our coverage about Pete Hegseth and the growing number of allegations about his behavior over the years and possible addiction to alcohol or issues with alcohol. The comment was a little too flippant for this moment that we're in. We just want to make that comment as well. We want to make that clear. We have differences in coverage with Fox News, and that's a good debate that we should have often. But right now, I just want to say there's a lot of good people that work at Fox News who care about Pete Hegseth, and we'll want to leave it at that.
So let's talk about the ratings before I talk about that poor apology, right? Fox News channel dominates cable news as CNN, MSNBC collapse to embarrassing weekly lows. Okay, so Fox News Channel averaged 1.4 million total day viewers and 2 million during prime time to dominate cable news last week. CNN had its lowest week among total viewers since June 2001 during the week of November 25th, only averaging 268,000 viewers compared to Fox News 1.4 million. Now, MSNBC did manage to get 346,000 average total viewers, which is more than CNN. Okay, whatever. But it was much of the same during prime time. MSNBC only averaged 465,000 total viewers instead of the million for Fox News. Now, obviously, one of the excuses they're going to run with is they expect that the ratings are going to drop after the election. And once Trump is sworn in, then ratings will go back up. Now, me and you, we don't believe that whatsoever. I mean, my YouTube channel alone got 70 million views last month. So I don't really buy that. Okay. I think YouTube, podcasting, and other independent creators are definitely going to outperform cable news. Now let's get back to this apology. Now, again, guys, this is exactly what KJP should be doing. It's exactly what President Joe Biden should be doing. He should come out and issue a formal apology to the American citizens and say, hey, you know what? I was not truthful with you guys. I love my son. I was always going to do this, et cetera, because, you know, your legacy is already finished. You might as well just go out by telling the truth. Now, this next story is breaking news. The judge in the Daniel Penny case has dismissed the biggest charge against him. Let's hear Fox News report this right now. Check it out.
All right, a judge has gone ahead and dismissed the manslaughter charge in the Daniel Penny trial after the jury was hopelessly deadlocked on the issue, going back and forth on it for the better part of the afternoon. Ultimately, the judge dropping it. But, of course, it's not over. There is one remaining, and that is criminally negligent behavior on the part of Penny during that whole incident. That, of course, is in the eye of the beholder, and 12 jurors who clearly couldn't agree on the more serious manslaughter charge. Anyone's guess how they will rule when they come back. on this lesser charge. CB Cotton with more in New York. CB.
Hi, Neil. Well, what this essentially means at this point is that Daniel Penny's future still hangs in limbo for the time being until at least Monday, and we still don't know what Monday will bring, how jurors will deliberate.
Now, here's some important information about this trial, right? Number one, they're going to circle back on Monday and finish it out, and hopefully he's just dismissed of everything completely, right? But number two, the one thing that actually concerns me is the fact that there were people that are part of the jury that actually thought he was guilty. I mean, I don't understand how you even get to that conclusion. But I can explain, I guess, why that is a possibility. And it's because culturally, where we are as a country, which is why I want to bring up the story, is you have people who look at a Daniel Penny and say, what he did is toxic. Yeah, when he was trying to protect women and children, yeah, that's toxic. And it goes back to what former President Obama doesn't understand. You know, the ultra progressive liberals who buy into this, I would call it toxic femininity, right? That right there is what pushed a lot of men away from the Democratic Party. And you're seeing this play out in so many different areas of the country. And this case is an example of that. So I'm happy to hear that that's what the judge ended up deciding. And then clearly more will come next Monday. Okay, so let's go ahead and kick this over to you guys. I want to hear what you guys have to think about what JD Vance had to say when he came out, and he obviously supported Pete Hegseth, called out the media for what they're trying to do to Pete. Let me know your thoughts about that. Also, what do you think about KJP, the White House press secretary, having to continue to double down on her lies? She's having a hard time trying to defend what Joe Biden did. She knows the American people don't trust anything they say anymore. But of course, she has to continue to play mental gymnastics. Please put that in the comment section as well. And also tell me what you think about Daniel Penny, at least getting one of the charges actually dropped or dismissed by the judge. Thank the Lord for that, because I just couldn't see why he would actually be convicted of that type of charge. Let me know your immediate reaction to that breaking news. Now, it's no secret that Washington really needs to be cleaned up. The fat needs to be cut. The spending needs to come down. People need to be fired. Programs need to go away. And that's why Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy was on Capitol Hill yesterday with Republicans, finally having a sit-down meeting talking about Doge. Now, Democrats clearly had a meltdown over this, and we highlighted a few. So if you guys want to check out that video and what actually took place and the reactions, all you have to do is click on it because it's coming up right now.